Let's talk about the digital SLR Advantage. Now, when you're shooting with a digital SLR, you're really shooting with a camera with a computer, a supercomputer in it. Technically, it's not a supercomputer, but there are so many different computer components in here. These components help the camera focus faster than humanly possible, and they help you get the best possible exposure in all different lighting conditions, indoors and out. For example, check out these two shots. You have total creative control with a digital SLR. I took the shot on the left in Bangkok. This is the Temple of the Moon. I used a wide angle setting on my zoom lens, a 24mm setting, so I got everything in the scene in focus. And I underexposed that because my digital SLR camera lets me underexpose or overexpose the scene if I wanted to. I set the exposure there at -1/4 so the highlights weren't blown out. The picture on the right, the cowboy, I exposed for the background. So shooting with a digital SLR gives you total exposure control. The biggest advantage to shooting with the digital SLR is you look like a pro. No, I'm only kidding. The biggest advantage to shooting with the digital SLR is that you could put all these different lenses and tele-extenders on these lenses to make the scene look wider or to get you closer to the scene. Look at this picture of this owl. I shot that picture with a 100 to 400mm zoom with the lens set at 400mm. That telephoto zoom lens brought me closer to the subject. Took the picture on the right on safari in Botswana. Actually, that was an amazing experience. I'm using a wide-angle lens here, a 20mm setting on my wide-angle zoom lens. I got the entire scene in focus. And the picture in the middle is a macro shot. I use my macro lens to get me really close to the subject. And with a macro lens, you can get 1-to-1 image magnification. So the picture could look life-size or even larger than life. So what all these lenses do, they actually, as I said, they can get you closer to the scene or give you a wider view, but they really give you a lot more creative control, and it helps you really picture the world in your own individual way. For example, I was down in Antarctica, and I don't know how many of you have been down to Antarctica, but when you get to the bottom of the world, you could actually see the curvature of the world. I know you didn't buy that. Actually, this picture was taken with a 15mm lens on my full-frame digital SLR. And when you do that and with a full-frame fisheye lens and tilt the lens down, you get this beautiful curvature of the Earth. So this is an advantage of shooting with the full-frame digital SLR and a fisheye lens. A camera like this, the Canon Digital Rebel XTI, it's not a full-frame image sensor camera, so you would not get this effect. So the camera you use actually affects how the lens functions on your camera. Check out these shots. I took both of these shots with the 65mm super macro lens. With this lens, I could actually fill the frame with a grain of rice. That's how close you can get to the subject. So again, these lenses help you picture the world in your own individual way. Another advantage to shooting with a digital SLR is you can add an accessory flash. Now, you can add an accessory flash to some compact cameras, but the metering system in a digital SLR is more sophisticated, so you get more control. You get the full use out of the flash. Now, when you pick a flash, you want to use a flash that has what's called variable output flash control, which means you can increase the flash exposure or reduce the flash exposure to fine-tune, that's right, your exposures. You also want to pick a flash that has a swivel head, so you could bounce the light off the ceiling, or you might want to bounce it off the wall. But now, there are yellow walls here in this great studio here down at Kelby Training. If I took a picture and bounced the flash off the yellow wall, guess what? I would look yellow. So if it was red, I would look red. So what you want to do is when you're bouncing the light off a ceiling or a wall, you want to make sure it's a white wall. Now, speaking of flash, here's another tip. My number one flash photography tip is this. Take the darn flash off the camera. Meaning, if you take the flash off the camera, you can get more creative light control. So what I like to do is I like to use a wireless transmitter on my camera like this, turn it on, and then I can shoot like this and position the flash anywhere I want. So this is another advantage of shooting with a digital SLR camera. Check out this picture. I took this picture right after sunrise in Kenya. Look at this beautiful light. What I wanted to do is I wanted to capture just some of the clouds in the sky. So what I was able to do is dial down my exposure using the exposure compensation on my camera. I dialed it down a stop to get those beautiful highlights in the sky. Now, Some of you might be saying, hey, I heard Scott Kelby say, or some of the other great Kelby training experts, they say never underexpose the scene because you're going to get a lot of noise. You're going to get a lot of grain, and you're going to get a lot of grain in the shadows. Well, guess what? They're right. But what I'm doing is I'm not really underexposing the scene. What I'm doing is I'm exposing the scene for the highlights, and that's what I always do. I always expose the scene for the highlights because if they're overexposed and blown out, they're going to be gone forever. We're going to talk more about that a little later. A digital SLR also gives you total motion control. Look at this picture of this pelican. I photographed this beautiful bird. Well, I think it's beautiful. Landing on the dock in St. Augustine, Florida. I used a 1/25th of a second shutter speed to just blur the action just a little bit, to add a little motion to the bird's wings. Now, look at the picture on the right. I took this picture in Mongolia. I wanted to get this shot with the animal, with the horse, with all the hooves off the ground. So I used a 500th of a second shutter speed. I set my camera on rapid frame advance, and I took a lot of pictures and I got the shot. So a digital SLR also gives you total motion control. But when it really comes down to it, if I could sum it up in one word, actually 3 words, what does a digital SLR do for you? It gives you professional quality results. Check out this picture. I took this in Mongolia. 500 Mongolian soldiers were running over the mountain, charging at full speed. Now, right at me. Good thing I got out of the way, by the way. If I didn't have an SLR that let me shoot at a high shutter speed, if I didn't have an autofocus lens that focused faster than I possibly could, if I didn't have a frame rate on my camera that gave me all those rapid frames right in a row, I wouldn't be able to get the shot. So if you want to get professional quality results, you really want to shoot with a digital SLR.